Hello, welcome to this video. In this video, I would like to go over the basics of tree navigation in PioSolver and what kind of data can be displayed and analyzed in PioSolver. This video is a part of my series of videos about the basics of PioSolver, and I'm assuming that the viewer of this video might have never seen PioSolver before, but I do assume that he or she knows at least the rules of a game of Texas Hold'em. So PioSolver is a program that can solve certain Texas Hold'em heads-up spots. It means spots where there are at most two players. And it works by having an explicit game tree involving two players, out of position and in position player, and it can solve those trees, which means it finds the pair of strategies for both players that are trying to maximize the EV or the expected value from the hand for both of these players. And a little explanation about what I mean an explicit game tree. So the concept of a game tree is simple. It's a tree as a mathematical concept where the root of the tree is the starting point for the analysis. And in the case I'm showing here today, and probably in most use cases of PioSolver, it's a moment when a flop is dealt, two players have some ranges, we have some betting structure, and we have a tree. So first we have this root node, and then decision of a player splits the tree into two or more branches if there are more bet sizes. And when we reach the turn, the tree splits into 49 branches for each possible turn card, etc., etc. And once the branching takes place, like each branch of the tree, like here, for example, is bet 94 and check. So each branch of the tree is like a separate tree on its own that doesn't interact anymore with other parts of the tree. So there is absolutely no interaction between a check and a bet node other than the fact that they are children of the same root node. And each node in a tree is uniquely identified by betting actions and the cards being dealt. And one thing that distinguishes PioSolver from some other tools is that it keeps the full tree in memory. And the results it shows are mathematically correct within those specified abstractions, and can be verified with pen and paper, or possibly more likely by some other program. But the numbers can be 100% verified just based on the starting conditions and strategies the PioSolver has computed. So the EVs and exploitability, everything can be proven that it's correct within this tree. Well, there are some other tools that claim to produce strategies of, for example, the same exploitability as PioSolver, using much less time, using some AI, where they actually only produce the flop strategies, but they claim, oh, if we have actually produced the full tree, it would be having this exploitability and whatnot. And I'm not to say that these are bad tools or that they don't show decent strategies or that you shouldn't use them, but I think it's an important distinction that they show you some strategies and you just have to trust them. Whereas in the case of PioSolver, you have guarantees that the numbers you see, they are indeed 100% correct. So like the poker wisdom you get from those numbers may vary depending on the quality of the inputs and the quality of the abstraction, like if you choose proper bet sizes and if you have proper assumptions about players' ranges. But within those constraints, the numbers you see in PioSolver are 100% correct. And provably so. Okay, so I will probably make a separate video about what it means exactly, exploitability, and how to calculate EVs and everything like that. So in this video, I will focus more on the basic of basically what we see on this first screen. So once the tree is solved, the solver has computed some strategies, and we can navigate through the tree and watch the strategies, ranges, and EVs. So if we go back to the root node, we can see that the range of out of position player and the range of in position player. Here I have our default 3-bet pot tree, where out of position player has 3-bet the pot in heads up, and in position player has some calling range. So the first thing we can look at the screen is this range. And when we click range, then on this 13 by 13 grid, we see for each hand the like how often it is present in the starting range. We can also see other things like equity, EV, strategy, so how often the solver performs certain action for each combo. And here I would like to maybe make a slightly mark about the how we can see, for example, the strategy for a particular holding, like king of club, 10 of club. So there are like two ways to do that. We can use the suit selector in here, and then we can see the results in the on the grid directly. Or without it, we can move mouse over the king 10 suited square, and we see the numbers for each of those combos. So what more do we have on the screen? So we have this range explorer. So we can, for example, see already in the root that out of position player, so the preflop aggressor, has nut advantage on this board. So has much more strong hands than the in position player. And we can see it here in many ways. One of the ways is we can see that sets 2-pair and overpair contains like 11% of out of position player hand and only 4% of in position player hands. We can also see it in the equity distributions, where we can select a number of hands above with equity above 75%, and we see that OOP has much more hands in this bucket than in position player. And also we see that the total range advantage is on the side of OOP. So the OOP's range has on average 55% equity, and in position player has only 45% equity, and even bigger advantage in the EV, where on average the out of position player wins 105 chips out of 180 chips pot. We can also show here graphs displaying the equity and EV for either one or both players. When we hover over some categories in the Range Explorer, we can see where they are present on the graph and on the grid for both players. We have these two squares in here, or more than two in case there are more actions, which show the total frequencies in this node for the whole range. So for example, we see that in the root node, the out of position player is betting 116 combos, which consists a bit less than 55% of his range. We also have here a distinction between a combo calculated frequency and real frequency affected by the blocker effect. I will not go into detail about what it is in this video. So yeah, what else do we have in here? So we have a strategy, which we can look at. We have strategy and EV. So the graphical representation is of a strategy. It's exactly the same as when we click strategy, whereas there is an additional information here about the EV of each combo. So it shows that for any given combo, what is the expected value for both actions. So for example, in this case of 9-8 suited in hearts, we have that the bet and check are both making on average roughly 125 chips out of the 180 chips that are already in the pot. And if we, for example, click bet, and we see here again a strategy, we see, for example, this 9-8 of hearts. On average, from this 180 chips in the pot and additional 94 chips that the villain has already put in, the raise wins 133 chips and the call wins 142 chips. Fold wins and loses nothing. So it means that on average, it's much better to play a call with this hand. And for example, there are some negative EVs. So for example, raising without a flash draw with 9-8 is just losing money, which is indicated by this negative EV. So there is here also the strategy and react, which shows our reaction, which shows the strategy and our reaction to the most frequent bet or raise of the villain. So for example, for this 9-8 suited, we see that we are betting most of the time, and then when facing a raise, we re-raise 30% of the time, we bet and call 57% of the time, and we check call roughly 12% of the time. And almost never, but with some very, very small probability, we sometimes check and raise. So these numbers should be pretty much the same as when we would actually go to bet, raise, and now strategy. We can see that proportionally how often the 9-8 of hearts is actually for betting and how often it's calling, and it's never folding. So it's basically the strategy and react is a shortcut to navigating to this raise nodes or bet nodes to see what is our reaction. We have here also this compare button, which compares the EV and for each combo shows whether it's better to bet or check in this particular spot. And for example, one thing that we often notice for the first decision on the flop is that there are very few hands which have clear EV advantage to betting or checking. So to build a good strategy is more about building a right hand distribution rather than finding a perfect play with each single hand. But for example, if we click bet and we, for example, compare which we want to compare the difference between raise and fold, we will see that much more hands have a very strong preference that either one or the other is better. And even between like a call and raise, we still see that most hands actually strongly prefer call, and for a few hands there is some indifference, which is also shown here by the fact that the optimal strategy computed by PioSolver basically never raises in this spot. So we have range, which we covered. We have equity, which is just showing how big percentage of the pot would certain hand win against the current villain's range if there were no more betting at this point. So that the probability of this hand winning against all possible holdings of an opponent. And EV is showing the actual expectation of how many chips we're going to win from this point on, assuming that both players follow the strategies from strategies computed by PioSolver in the tree. We have blockers, which show how often our hand is blocking certain parts of villain's range. I have already a video about blockers, so I will not cover them in here. We can also look at what is the meaning of the checkboxes we have in here. So refresh on new selection is quite easy. So the idea is that if we have it selected and we go through the tree, then the grid is immediately updated with the information on a new tree. But if we don't have this refresh on selection, then browsing the tree does not affect it. Square size proportional to weight. So this is the feature that can be used in a spot like here, for example, where a lot of hands have low frequency. And if we want to see more clearly what every hand is doing in this spot, then we disable the square size proportional to weight, and we see each live hand, so each hand which is in the starting range, we see like the full square to easier like grasp this data. Whereas square size proportional to weight also shows us which hands are actually in our current range. Normalized square is something that will be more clearly visible when we go to some rare, or for example, okay, so this is already some relatively rare node, and if we disable, like, if we don't normalize squares, then almost each hand here has like 0 weight. However, if we normalize squares, then we keep the proportions between hands the same, but the most probable hand, in this case it's 2 of spades and 2 of diamonds, we multiply the size by the factor to make this particular combo like a full square. And then also in the full picture, we can see what is the rough relative distribution or the relative probability between the hands. So we can see which hands are most likely if we already get here, even though all of them are quite unlikely. And another thing we have here is this bars proportional to weight. So for example, in this particular case, if we look at 6-5 suited, we have 4 combos, and 3 of those combos fold and 1 of those combos call. And this is what we see here, that the 1/4 of the square is calling and 3/4 are folding. But if we use the square size proportional to weight, then it actually shows us that it's more like 50-50 in here. So if we use this bars with proportional to weight, then on the main grid, instead of having just one place here for each combo, we do have those bars weighted, so we only see the results for the combos which are actually still present in the range in here. So that's what this button is for. What else do we got here? One thing that is relatively useful when we already get to some node on the turn, for example, we very often want to compare similar nodes. So for example, we are interested in what is the strategy in the same spot but on a different card. So there are quite some shortcuts to stay in the same node but only change the runouts. There are many ways. One of them is to click board, which will first allow us to change any colors on this particular flop. So for example, Queen of Diamond, Jack of Heart, Jack of Spades, 2 of Spades, and then we can select any turn, which is 5 of Clubs, and this opens the same spot just with a changed board. Another way to do it is to go to Tool, Change Runouts, and we have Rank Up, Rank Down, Suit Up, Suit Down, which can be also controlled by the keyboard using Control arrow keys. So when we click Control Up, then it changes 5 to 6. If we press Control Right, then it changes 6 of Clubs to 6 of Diamonds. And this is one way to quickly switch between runouts. Another thing, we can go to feature runouts heat map, which is a feature which allows us to see, for example, average strategy in this line across different turn runouts. We can also make some filters, like for example top pair plus, to see what is the average equity or IP equity or EV on different runouts for only those selected hands, or for example for ace-ace. So we can see, for example, that if we have aces, then pretty much all turn cards are good for us. Okay, so also what we can do here is we can click on a particular point on the grid, and this will change the runout in the currently open tree to the one we click. So if we click 10 of Clubs, then it changes the turn to 10 of Clubs. If we click 2 of Hearts, it navigates to a node with a 2 of Hearts. And there are much more things in PioSolver. So we have tools, and we have some more tools and some analysis features, and I will leave them for more videos, maybe going a bit deeper into some of them. But this is the basics of tree navigation and browsing strategies and EVs in PioSolver tree. So I hope that was somehow helpful, and I hope to record more of these videos about the basic concepts of PioSolver. And yeah, that's it. So thank you for watching.